Have you ever, gotten overwhelmed just thinking about athletic training and like all that goes into it? I mean, you see these amazing athletes and wonder, like, what's the secret?
Yeah.
Crazy training, right? Like, they must just be going all the time.
Well, actually, that's what's so fascinating about this deep dive. We're really going to get into it.
Okay.
With these two incredible people, Susan Hobson, she's a 3-time Olympian,
Wow.
and Bryce Anderson, he's an elite athlete himself and a performance dietitian.
Oh, wow. So he's really in it.
Exactly. And they kind of break down this whole world of what it takes to like actually build a champion athlete
Okay.
with this thing they call the training pyramid.
Okay, a training pyramid. So like the pyramids of Egypt. What are we talking about here?
Well, imagine like a pyramid right in the base of the pyramid, like the foundation.
Right.
Is really about the simple things. So things like good nutrition, making sure you're sleeping enough, and really prioritizing recovery.
See, that's so interesting because I feel like even outside of like professional athletics, we all get caught up in that like go, go, go mentality.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, we got to work hard and push ourselves. But are we really paying attention to those foundational things that are actually going to like set us up to be our best?
Totally. And that's the thing that I think is so fascinating is that even at that elite level, it's not always about adding more. It's about really mastering those simple things and doing them consistently.
Well, mastering the basics. Okay, I'm all about simple but effective.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about here? Give me the inside scoop. What are some of these strategies that even elite athletes are using?
Well, Susan Hobson, actually, she's got some really interesting practical advice. Like one thing she talks about is just like always carrying a water bottle with you.
Okay.
And she says, make it a rule. Like every time you go to the bathroom, take a good like gulp of water.
You know what? I love that because it's such a simple thing.
Right.
That anybody can do. And it's like you're building it into your routine.
It's a great reminder.
It's not just like, oh, when I'm like parched, I'll go find some water.
Exactly. And she also talks about being really intentional about scheduling downtime.
Oh, that's a good one.
Which can be hard.
Especially because I feel like so many athletes are like, go, go, go.
Absolutely. But, even if you are someone who thrives on being busy,
right,
it's still so important to like intentionally schedule that rest.
It's true. It's like that whole thing. Rest is not laziness.
Yes.
It's strategic.
100%.
And Susan had some interesting advice, too, about like combining activities.
Yes.
Like these 2-for-1s.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit more about that.
So she gives the example of like, foam rolling while you're watching TV.
Oh, that's good.
So you're still kind of like relaxing, but you're also taking care of your muscles.
Right.
You're getting that recovery in.
Exactly. It's like maximizing your time being efficient.
Absolutely.
I like it.
And it's funny, she actually shares a story about this runner, Elena, who she works with, who uses knitting as her like mental break, especially when she's traveling for competitions.
Knitting. Okay, so not what I was expecting to hear, but I'm intrigued.
Right.
How does that play into this whole like athletic training thing?
I think it just highlights the importance of having those outlets outside of your primary focus.
Right.
Even as an elite athlete.
Right.
So it's something totally different. It's a way to relax, de-stress, and kind of like engage your mind in a different way.
It's like cross-training for your brain.
There you go.
I like it.
Yeah.
Bryce Anderson talks about this concept of energy availability.
Yes.
EA, and I found this really fascinating.
Yeah, he does a good job of explaining it. He uses this analogy of a seesaw.
Sure.
So you've got the energy that you're expending, especially through training.
Right.
And then the energy that you're taking in, primarily through food.
Right.
And it's about keeping that seesaw balanced.
Oh, I like that. Very visual. And he doesn't shy away from the serious stuff.
Yeah.
He talks about relative energy deficiency and sport REDS.
Yes.
And the dangers of that, especially for young athletes.
It's such a big deal.
Yeah.
And he points out some warning signs that I think a lot of people wouldn't necessarily associate with energy imbalance. So things like getting a lot of colds or like having these kind of nagging injuries that just never seem to fully heal.
Interesting.
Yeah, mood swings or even like trouble sleeping.
See, that's what's so interesting is like those could be symptoms of so many things.
Right.
So you might not even think to connect it back to nutrition.
Exactly.
That's so interesting.
And I think this is where having that like really well-rounded support system that we've kind of been talking about comes into play.
Right.
Because you might have a coach who's very focused on the physical training aspect, but you also need someone looking at that bigger picture, making sure that the athlete is getting the nutritional support that they need and addressing any potential red flags.
So it really does take a village.
It does.
Like we've got the foundation, the basics down.
Yeah.
But then there's this whole other layer of support that athletes need to really thrive.
Yeah, and, both Susan and Bryce talked about this kind of collaborative approach where it's not just the athlete, going at it alone.
It's a team.
Exactly.
Everybody working together toward this common goal. And this is where, like, the coach's role, I think, is so interesting, particularly when we think about nutrition.
Definitely.
Because, like you said before, it's not just about pushing the athletes physically right.
Right.
They need to be aware of the whole picture.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the things that coaches can actually do to kind of create that healthy environment around nutrition?
Well, Bryce really emphasizes the power of role modeling.
Oh, that's huge.
Like coaches who are walking the walk themselves when it comes to their own nutrition, their own recovery.
Right.
It sends a really powerful message
For sure.
to their athletes.
Especially younger athletes, right?
Absolutely.
Who are looking up to them.
Yeah. Yeah. So it kind of normalizes those practices. It shows that it's not just like an extra thing.
Right. It's part of it.
It's part of the process.
It's essential.
Yeah. And he also suggests making things like pre and post training, fueling just like a standard part of the routine, not just an afterthought.
Yeah.
Making sure that there are nutrition breaks built into longer training sessions.
Oh, that's a good one.
And then I think really importantly, like acknowledging and praising athletes when they are prioritizing those things.
Yes.
When they're like prioritizing their recovery, their nutrition.
It's positive reinforcement.
Exactly. It creates that culture where those things are valued.
I love it.
And Susan had a really good point about communication.
Oh, yeah, because you could have the best team in the world, but...
Totally, because you can have all these amazing experts.
Right.
But if they're not talking to each other,
right,
it can create so much confusion.
It's like having all the pieces of the puzzle, but
exactly.
not knowing how to put it together.
Right. And even be detrimental to the athlete if they're getting conflicting advice from their coach and their nutritionist and their physiotherapist.
Oh, for sure.
So it's important to have kind of that point person, often the coach.
Right. They're kind of like the quarterback.
Exactly.
Making sure everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
I love it. It's funny because as we're talking about this, I'm thinking this applies to so much more than just athletics.
Totally.
It's like building a champion athlete.
Hmm.
Those same principles apply to really anything you want to achieve in life.
100%.
Like you've got to have that strong foundation. You've got to create those good habits. You've got to have a good support system.
It's that holistic approach.
Yes.
Right?
I love that.
Looking at the whole picture. And I think what both Susan and Bryce really emphasize is that it's a marathon, not a sprint. So, whether you're building a champion athlete or you're trying to achieve any kind of goal in your life, it takes time, it takes consistency, and it takes that commitment to the long game.
It does. And that is such a powerful message, I think, for all of us to hear today. So as you go about your week, think about those small things, those small habits, those small changes you can make that are really going to set you up for that long-term success. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.